On today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my favorite Urdu poems that I hope will lighten your soul because these are definitely classics with timeless lessons when it comes to Urdu poetry. Now, let's start with the first one because if there is any Urdu poem that perfectly describes the disillusionment that we feel about life, especially as adults, it is these two iconic lines written by Mirza Ghalib, and he says, हजारों ख्वाहिशें ऐसी कि हर ख्वाहिश पे दम निकले बहुत निकले मेरे अरमान लेकिन फिर भी कम निकले, which essentially translates to I have thousands of wishes and I hope each one takes my breath away. A lot of my wishes have come true, but then again, not enough of them have come true. For me, there are actually a couple of reflections that I want to share about this poem. The first is the fact that personally, no matter how grateful I am for what I have, I will still think about wanting more. And it's not wanting more in a greedy or selfish way. It's wanting more in the sense that my spirit knows at a soul level that its potential is limitless. And because it knows that it's limitless, I feel as if I'm always going to be nudged to explore as many possibilities, to have as many experiences as I can. And the other thing that I will say is that because our time here on earth is not permanent, we are always going to feel some discomfort about that truth. Meaning that because we were never meant to live here forever, and therefore it's by design that no matter how much fulfillment we try to achieve in this world, there will always be this slight feeling of something still missing. And again, not in an ungrateful way, but in a way that your soul just sometimes feels these glimmers of unexplainable melancholy because it knows that everything is just so fleeting and temporary, and that no matter how many of your wishes have already come true and have completely taken your breath away, there will still be remnants, even if it's slight remnants of this feeling that there can still be more. The second Urdu poem is all about your internal world and how it determines the manifestation of a higher reality for yourself, as Allama Iqbal famously once said, खुदी को कर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से खुद पूछे बता तेरी रज़ा क्या है, which essentially translates to make yourself so great that before what is destined for you happens, God asks you himself, what will make you happy? And anyone who has ever done the inner work on themselves will always realize this to be the truth. That all of a sudden, life begins to really flow when you know who you are and what you're about, especially in terms of what you are willing to accept and not accept in your life. And of course, at the center of that journey is God. And it's the realization that actually you can skip all the intermediaries in your life that you think are going to give you what you want. And instead, you can go directly to the source and ask God himself. And the other thing that I will say is that the way that you invest in yourself in terms of doing the inner work may not show up in grandiose ways in your life, but you would definitely feel the subtle difference in your day to day. You find more peace, even in uncertainty. And you just have this feeling that taking the time to align yourself with a better destiny is going to resonate more with the person that you're actually becoming. The other thing that I will say is that in all likelihood, you're going to get what you want. If you're striving for something with the best of your ability and intentions, you are most likely going to get that thing or something better, especially when God does his part to help you get there. But that doesn't mean that the path to getting what you want is going to be easy. Sometimes you are absolutely going to have to grow and overcome challenges because you don't even realize your own blind spots until you actually need to get past them to get to what you've always wanted. Now, this third Urdu poem talks about not getting the closure that we wish we could get from other people. It was written by Farhat Ehsas, and he says, एक रात वो गया था जहां बात रोक के अब तक रुका हुआ हूँ वहीं रात रोक के, which essentially translates to one night he left from where he stopped the conversation. Until now, I am still stuck in that very same night. And you know what? I think there are so many of us who are just like the person that the poet is describing. We too are stuck in that moment or in that place where we wish the conversation could have continued to get the closure that we desperately wanted. But in the end, holding on to that desire for closure and not having the ability to move on without it is keeping you stuck and keeping you from experiencing other possibilities of joy in your life. You need to be able to move forward, both physically and emotionally, in order to truly live in the present moment. And as we all know, that is where the magic is happening, anyways. But I also want us to self reflect on the idea of closure, because while we may be upset that someone else didn't say what needed to be said in order to give us closure, would we have done the same thing in that situation? Would we have also have had the courage to say what needed to be said in order to give someone else closure? And I think that if it's difficult for you to say the things that need to be said, then there is a part of you that perhaps could understand where someone else is coming from if they are unable to do the same thing. So that means that perhaps you don't have as much of a right to be upset at someone else because in that situation, you wouldn't be able to communicate what you needed to either. Now, the last Urdu poem for today talks about the idea of rejecting our own blessings. It was written by Kaif Bhopali, and he says, "Kaun aayega yahan, koi na aaya hoga. Mera darwaza hawaon ne hilaya hoga," which essentially translates to, "Who will come here? No one has come here. My door was likely moved by the wind." Now, how many of us are living life every day, rejecting our own blessings? And I know the term blessings makes us automatically think of the big things, but it's also the everyday conveniences that we benefit from without even noticing. And when we don't really notice these things, we end up rejecting the blessings without noticing either. I'll give you an interesting example. I remember attending this farewell party one time, and the friend whose party it was for comes up to me and tells me, you are someone who I would consider my first friend at work. You were the first person to invite me to have lunch with you, and it was really great getting to know you. But I always wondered why you wanted to have lunch with me. And I was just so lost for words when she said that because whenever I meet someone new and we're mutually enjoying each other's company, I just assume that us having lunch together is so we can take advantage of the opportunities to connect, so that we can cultivate a stronger personal or professional relationship. And this is how you might unexpectedly reject your own blessings by creating unnecessary doubt about someone who wants to genuinely connect with you. Because that does change the energy around you and the way that you engage with people. And of course, others are able to pick up on that too. And I have to say, if you are someone at work or even in your personal life where you have people that you also enjoy connecting with, and who are asking you to meet and grab lunch together, you should consider yourself very lucky because not everyone can say that they have even one person that reaches out to them with good intentions to connect with them. Of course, in all situations, you need to use your discernment about the people you're engaging with. But don't assume right away that people don't like you, because that is impacting the way that you develop platonic relationships, where you might be rejecting positive intentions to connect without even knowing it. Because just like what the poet was alluding to earlier, someone could very well be knocking at your door to genuinely connect with you, but because you think that's not a possibility or you feel you don't deserve that possibility, then you're always going to mistake the potential for genuine connection for disinterest. I hope you found these Urdu poems to be just as enlightening as I did, because no matter the language, nothing quite speaks to our soul like poetry.